Test, test.
That's a test. Everybody come on in and grab a seat if you could. Appreciate it. So we can get our meeting going. Come on in, find a seat. Great. We're going to call that. Come on in and we'll call the meeting to order here in a second. Oh. Great, welcome. Very official, very official. Do we have some folks joining on virtual? We have folks join on virtual. About how many? 15 or so participants. Great. Well, welcome everybody to the Rivers Coalition meeting for September. I'm glad you're here. We got a lot to kind of cover, especially a specific resolution we want to talk about in a minute. But first, join me in doing a pledge to the flag, and we'll start our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Be seated. All right. So basically, some of the business matters and stuff we'll do. We do have our membership list. Those of you who are members have hopefully got your tag, can be identified, and there may be more than one delegate here from the organizational members. There is a list in the back, and also you'll notice there's the voting, and we sent out a specific resolution about it was approved by the board by 2/3 majority plus of the board at our board meeting on the 15th, and now we're bringing it as a public pronouncement or ratification by the associate members, which are all our member organizations. So we have to have a quorum, which we have more than 20 active members present, which I think we do, even by raise of hands probably. We have at least 20 members of the coalition, 21. So, but also online. So there may be members attending online, and this is the way we do this ratification of a resolution, is that we do it by vote. And so that's why these little ballots are placed in the back here. So we're going to do it by vote, and that helps us also to put down your name of the organization, the representative's name, and then vote yes or no to support the resolution or not support the resolution. And we're going to talk more about this subject as in our presentations. Eve Samples will give us a little bit more updates on it, but basically the resolution is about, objecting to any projects that are causing an issue with Everglades restoration and detriment to the Everglades, and specifically projects like the detention center known as Alligator Alcatraz, or the rock mining that's going on there. And the government agencies and people need to follow the NEPA process, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, which requires all those agencies to coordinate, review, and approve what goes on in these things. And it also is detrimental to Everglades restoration. Why is that important to us as a Rivers Coalition? Because we want that Everglades restored so that we can send that water south from the lake and not have a discharge east and west to our coastal estuaries, particularly St. Lucie, obviously. So we put this resolution together. It's pretty direct. It'll be hopefully approved today, and then we can put that out to the governor and other people that we'll send it to, and make sure that they know that our voices are strong about this particular issue. So if you have any thoughts or comments on it, we can talk about that, but we're ready to vote on it. And again, if you are on virtual, if you would just you're in the chat function on the virtual meeting, you put in your name of your organization, your name, and then a yes or no on to support the resolution or not. And that's the way we're going to do it. So if you haven't put your ballot in the box, just please do at some point, and we'll do up the counts once that's all done today, and then we'll make that announcement later on. So as far as other business matters, I mean, we're looking at obviously restoration of our own watershed and everything. We're having meetings about the BMAP process, which you heard me talk about last month, and we're really concentrating on working with the Corps on LOSUM and trying to get an after action report to kind of how that did. So we have Major Bell here with us today to report on that and other situations there. So we appreciate that, and we'll kind of work to that. So let's move on into our kind of exciting news about our new city attorney, who's Ruth Holmes. Will give us a little bit of update about herself and how she's joined on board to the city. We're very excited. This was started a while back when the commissioners came to the Rivers Coalition and says, hey, we need some support to get an environmental attorney for the city of Stewart. And we thought it's a great idea. Our coalition board supported it, and obviously it's gone forward. And I really appreciate the city commission and everybody for voting for this. And again, thank you, city commissioners. I see a few here located, Chris and Collins and Campbell. Campbell's here. I saw you. I might be missing some city. Any other city commissioners here? Yes. And Eula is online. Again, thank you for not only your support for this initiative to get a new environmental attorney on for the city to help this fight of clean water, but also just for hosting us and having our ability to have the meetings here right in the heart of the estuary, right in the heart of City of Stewart. So thank you very much for the city. Give it up for the City of Stewart. Yeah, thank you. And let's introduce Ruth Holmes. Why don't you come up and start our presentation, and we'll follow up with Eve. Great. I think she can talk right from here, right? Test, test.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me this morning. I wanted to say a big shout out to the Stewart City Commission, and the reason for that is because, as probably all of you know, that the position that I hold today as the environmental attorney for the city is a unique position in the entire state of Florida, and it's unique because, in my opinion, as somebody who's worked in the public sector a long time in Florida, there are not many elected officials that have the backbone to do what the city of Stewart has done. And that is to look at some of these serious environmental issues and try to make changes where changes can be made. But I will also say that I look at this position as not only making changes, but also looking at the agencies that have done a whole lot to abate the situation, minimize discharges to the extent possible. And I'm sure a lot of you who live in this community know people who work for the agencies, whether at the state level or the federal level, and they live here, they're your neighbors. And you know those staff people, they don't want to see a dirty river either. Nobody does. And I think with that, that it is my obligation to look at where we have common goals. And we all have these common goals. Nobody wants to see a dirty river. Some people may have flood protection as a higher goal. But these things, I believe we can work in concert together on some issues. And I intend to do that. With that, I will also say that recently I took a class at University of Florida, IFAS, the Master Naturalist for Coastal Ecosystems. So I have a nice little paper certificate that I'm very proud of. But in that class, I did a presentation on where science drives the law. And I also believe that to be true. So there's nothing that I can do as a lawyer, even with my 27 years of background, most of that in environmental law, but there's nothing that I can do without expertise behind me. And I intend to rely on Rivers Coalition because this organization is filled with really qualified, knowledgeable people. So I hope that's a two-way street. I will rely on you, and I hope that you pick up the phone and call me, come knock on my door, and with that, let's make some positive changes in the future. And I'll take any questions that you have.
Getting a team together?
Right. So as far as the initial strategies that I have, the City of Stewart Commission approved hiring 3 contractors, one of whom is an engineering firm, Holtz Consulting. They're actually an existing firm with the City of Stewart, and they are going to subcontract with subject matter experts that have previous expertise at the Corps of Engineers, South Florida Water Management, to look at system capacities and system projects. What projects are great for the river and the estuary? What projects are working? What projects are not working? And what can we do as a city to support those projects that are beneficial, and also look at those projects that need to be moved along a little faster, maybe in a different direction, so to speak, maybe tweaked, whatever the city can do as a municipality to support and advocate for projects, recognizing that this is how the state of Florida addresses its water pollution problem, and we have to accept that. And so that contract will be providing a work product that will help me look at that. Other contracts I have with another environmental lawyer who actually interviewed for this position with me, along with a few other people, and he, I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple months, and he's a very interesting guy. He was general counsel for EPA Region 5 for a long time. He was also at the Attorney General's office for the state of Illinois, and through that did a lot of environmental work, state level, federal level, but his real expertise is at the federal level. And I think between, my experience at the state level, his experience at the federal level, I think that we've got a good team to kind of sort out what we can do, not only to support the positive things that are already happening in this area, but also look at how we can help push it a little faster. Third contract is with a DC lobbying firm who does work all over the state of Florida, mainly with local government, cities and counties, Broward, Monroe, even cities like Gulfport, smaller cities like Gulfport that are similar to the city of Stewart. And what they will do is to give us information about what's going on congressionally, whether it's funding appropriations or potential grant opportunities, what's happening with WRDA, what may be happening with future lake regulation schedules, things like that. So the information is going to help the city to have credibility outside of this organization, but also in the larger arena. So I would say thank your city commissioners for City of Stewart for really taking me to task, asking me the hard questions about those. And at the end of the day, seeing the benefit and efficacy of each of those efforts.
Appreciate the City of Stewart taking the lead, on this position, being the first in the state of Florida to have an environmental attorney. How laser focused will you and your position be on stopping the discharges, since that's the mission of this group? Is that your laser focus, or is it part of your focus?
Well, quite frankly, because of the task from the City Commission, that is my laser focus. It has to be. I also think, just like I said, we have to look at what's happening around us regionally that's positive to support, because in my opinion, having been in this arena before, you can't be adversarial all the time. You have to work shoulder to shoulder with partners that also want the same thing as you. So it is, I recognize it's going to be a tough road to hoe for me. It's a very fine line, but that's what I intend to do.
In, in anything that has to do with legal matter, especially in environmental lawsuits, is number one is documentation. What is in the river that's hurting us? Can you document it? I know Grant Gilmore went on a project to identify the endangered species in the river. What are those endangered species? Okay, is it the goby? All right, we had hundreds of thousands of those and they've disappeared. So what are the endangered species? What's in the river that hurts us? And how are you going to document all this? Because you can't file a lawsuit, you can't make an argument unless everything's been documented. And that's the most important of any kind of case. I know I did it for years, the documentation.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, so the Rivers Coalition has a multi sort of pronged mandate. One of that is zero discharges. The other ones are for a healthy environment. And I think that, personally, I think that clean water, healthy water is the most important of all of those. And I understand that there is a role for an environmental attorney to be both advocate as well as to defend the city. But that's a real fine line, and at some point, you need to take a stand. And if there is dirty water from whatever source that is, we need to be clear about that, and we need to take a stand on it. And there are several organizations around the state that are looking at healthy waters rather than necessarily clearly polluted waters being discharged. Do you have a perspective on that?
Well, I would say that it goes back to the Stewart City Commission. And to the extent that the Stewart City Commission is going to take a stand, then their lawyer's going to take that stand. With the documentation, of course. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for the attorney? I expect or appreciate that if you would attend our Rivers Coalition meetings in the future and kind of report and give us some updates from the city on things like that. We have you on the agenda now, and we'll have you from now on until so told, but we certainly appreciate your engagement and attendance, and let you know that, like Jim and many others out here who have a lot of experience in this river system. I mean, we have come together as a coalition, but our coalition goes back to 1998 when we started. But we've grown to incorporate and get all this participation from over 100 member organizations. And they're here as a resource to you and the city to say, hey, we need some, expertise in this area or that area, this area. We have it right here. Or in this region, that region of the river, or this region. It's all coming together here at this Rivers Coalition. So through the Rivers Coalition and through our communication out to other member organizations, we can certainly engage them in the strategy to your strategies to move things forward for the city. But again, thank you to the City Commission. Yes, please, Commissioner.
I just wanted to say that Ruth is amazing. I think all of you are getting a sense of who she is right now. She's a diplomat and a bulldog. She is very experienced in this field. And in my opinion, it is near miraculous that you're standing here right now, given the history of trying to make this happen. I would be remiss if I did not mention Max Stuckey. Where are you? Stand up. Okay. Everybody in this room probably has some sense of how relevant he is to her standing here. But he's one of the people that doesn't get enough credit for being a fellow relentless Irishman with a stubborn head. I know you don't, but that's why I'm making you stand up, I really appreciate Mac in driving all of us. He's been the powerhouse behind her standing here. So I'm glad you're here. It's a gift from God, and I'm looking forward to what you do. And thank you, Mac. Take it back there, yeah.
Hi, uh, Diane Goldberg, St. Lucie Audubon. Um, I would like to first thank you and congratulate you for becoming a master naturalist. I hope you will take the other two sections because they affect the coastal waters too. So it's important to have the information on all three. Also, I'd like you to know that I get Consumers Report online every single day and sometimes twice a day. And what they are saying is it is not safe to eat fish from any freshwater areas here in the United States or out of the country, as well as farmed fish. Just the saltwater fish is okay. But I am hoping that you will work on this problem and overcome all the pollution so that we will be able to start safely eating it again. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Riz, for coming on board. We're excited for you. All right, next up, we're going to bring up Eve to give us kind of an update on all things going on Everglades here. So thank you, Eve.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everybody. How are you today? There's a long history of stubborn bulldogs in the Rivers Coalition, so honored to have Ruth fighting for us. And I'm here to talk to you today about another fight that we're engaged in south of here in the Big Cypress National Preserve. So thanks to the board for inviting me to give an update. I know this can feel a little far afield of our core cause at the Rivers Coalition, but it's really instrumental in terms of the fabric of environmental protections that we as a society stitched together a half century ago. I'm going to tell you why that is and where our case stands. So just to zoom out a bit, Friends of the Everglades was founded by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in 1969, and we were actually founded to protect the very spot where this Everglades Detention Center was built this past summer. At the time, the threat was the Everglades Jetport. It would have been the world's largest airport, 5 times the size of JFK, which I was actually just in yesterday, a very large airport. This would have been 5 times larger. And Marjorie Stoneman Douglas created a group to help stop that because Big Cypress wasn't a national preserve yet, but its ecological value was recognized and its proximity to Everglades National Park was recognized, and the connectivity of Everglades wetlands was known as very important at that time. So Friends of the Everglades was founded, and that was one part of the reason that the Jetport was halted. The other part actually relates back to Martin County. At the time, Nathaniel Reed, former Martin County resident, the late Nathaniel Reed, was working for Department of Interior, and he was instrumental in getting the first broad environmental impact report done of that proposed Everglades Jetport. It was called the Leopold Report, and it was expansive, and it concluded that if that airport was built in the middle of Big Cypress, that it would ruin the Everglades. And that report was listened to, and it made its way all the way up to President Richard Nixon at the time. And Richard Nixon was the one who halted the Everglades Jetport from being constructed. And that's important because of that report and that process, the National Environmental Policy Act was born. That also was enacted in 1970, signed by Richard Nixon. This is a fundamental protection. We don't talk about NEPA every day, but NEPA is really at the heart of everything the Army Corps does, the LOSUM process. It gives us the right to give public input on projects, not just big federal projects like airports, but things like lake management plans and Everglades restoration projects. So NEPA is a very common sense law. It requires us, the government, to look before it leaps, to take public input, to do an environmental impact analysis, and to consider alternatives that could be less damaging. And none of those things were done when the detention center was built in the heart of the Everglades this summer. So Friends of the Everglades filed a lawsuit on June 27th under NEPA. We had to pull this together very quickly. At that time, actually, the detention center hadn't been constructed as we were getting our papers in order for the lawsuit. It was built in short order. It was opened on July 2nd. And we also filed notice of intent to sue under the Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act, and the National Parks Organic Act, which protects our national parks around the country. So why does this matter so much? I told you the history of the jet port, and I think a lot of people understand why the jet port would have been so damaging to the Everglades. And by the way, it was halted after one runway was built, right? So that one runway out there that has been expanded upon this summer is the runway where Alligator Alcatraz has been built. So the reason our fight matters, in addition to being symbolic and being on the front lines of NEPA and this bedrock environmental protection that we all need, is because since the detention center was built, 20 acres of new asphalt has been laid in the middle of Big Cypress, adjacent to the old runway, with no environmental study, zero environmental study, and inadequate stormwater systems to even catch the runoff. If we build a patio in our backyard here, we have to get a permit, right? And 20 acres of asphalt in the heart of Everglades wetlands was built without any environmental review. In addition to that, high-intensity lighting was erected at the site. You can't have a prison without lighting, and this is in the heart of habitat for the endangered Florida panther, which is a nocturnal species. Also, the endangered Florida bonneted bat is a concern there. So now, where we once had some of the most incredible dark skies in the southeastern United States, we have lighting that looks like a stadium that can be seen 15 miles away. We actually filed photos of that light pollution in court. In federal court in Miami. So we had 4 days of hearings in federal court in August, and a judge did grant a preliminary injunction at the end of those evidentiary hearings. She was moved that we needed to halt activity there so that damage wouldn't continue to occur. And then predictably, the state and federal defendants appealed that preliminary injunction up to the appeals court in Atlanta, the 11th Circuit, and that injunction was paused. That was on September 4th. So that's where we stand now. The whole case is ahead of us. Activity has been allowed to resume at the site since that injunction is paused, but we will be back in court with filings later this month and in November, and then there will be oral arguments in Atlanta in January. So I think this coalition has a stake in this, even though, again, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. It made the drive more than ever this summer, 2 hours and 40 minutes to the entrance to the jetport site. But we all have a stake in this because we as a society decided 56 years ago that we wanted a say in the government's environmental actions. And we stitched together this patchwork of protections, NEPA, the Endangered Species Act. We created the EPA. Now, we're seeing in Stewart's bringing in some new protections now, right? This all happened 56 years ago. These battles were fought and won. These debates were fought and won. And now we're at this moment of unraveling, right? The seams are being stretched. Some of the seams are breaking. And our case is on the front lines of that. And I'm very proud of that. And I think our founder, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, would be proud. And I think Nat Reed would be proud. So that's where we are today. Somewhat coincidentally, you have a resolution before you that another member of our Rivers Coalition Board, Casey Niffen, proposed. And we're honored to have you consider that. This group's voice has mattered for a long time, and it matters in this fight too. And this really is an environmental battle. I think some have tried to divide us and claim that there are other reasons for this battle, but we are on very sound environmental ground. The facts are on our side, and we will continue to fight hard in court. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about our legal battle or anything.
Appreciate it. All right, we'll start with Jim and Jim again. We got Jim.
I'm not unfamiliar with lawsuits. I was part of the first lawsuit against the government. I was a plaintiff and also went around and got 22 other plaintiffs to file a lawsuit against the government. And also was instrumental in raising about $170,000 to fight the lawsuit, and fund the lawsuit on it. I love Eve. You've always been a hero of mine, but I disagree with you. I think because I don't think it's going to, the money and effort spent to it, I don't think it's going to stop 1 gallon of water from going south. I don't think it's going to cause one more blade of grass to grow in our estuary. I think part of it is, like you said, you're picking it as an example, but I think a lot of it is too political. And I talked to a lot of other members of the Rivers Coalition, and they feel the same way. It's gone from a good effort, a good cause, to part of it is a political cause, which we don't agree with.
Thanks, Jim. I was aware of your position, and we stand firm that we have a sound environmental lane to travel in.
Jim, thank you for your feat. Eve, thank you very much for fighting this really difficult fight and also for achieving some of the successes that some of us might have predicted wouldn't happen. You know, lifting NEPA regulations is a really dangerous thing that is happening in a lot of places. Slightly more than 2 hours and 40 minutes north of here is Merritt Island National Seashore, and it is under assault from an enlarging Cape Canaveral. The NEPA restrictions there are being lifted as well. And when we start thinking about pollution and what damage might happen to a national seashore or national park, it is very much the same. And it really, really is nerve-wracking. And I hope you persist. I hope you win. I hope you demonstrate that lifting NEPA regulations on any project is a dangerous path to go down. And I greatly appreciate saving the airport, Alligator Alcatraz, from increased development, but it's a project that is really emblematic of a very, very dangerous set of circumstances for the rest of the country.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks for paying attention to what's happening in the Northern Lagoon. There you go. Mhm.
That's kind of hard to say, right? But that's okay.
Um, um, This comment comes from the perspective of somebody who is a war-weary warrior. As you've known, as you've followed, the Conservation Alliance St. Lucie County has tried to protect certain areas that are supposed to be already protected. And now we've been really active with trying to protect Oculina coral reef habitat area of particular concern. And there's a huge political struggle that we didn't have several years ago. It makes it much more difficult. And so that's where my question comes back to, as we're fighting now with the Oculina coral reef, we'll see very soon whether science and formal designation of the habitat area of protective concern is still active. And then there's this constant thought or constant recognition. I know it. Anyway.
Daryl.
Yes, and so we are now waiting for the decision from the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council about whether that habitat area of conservation designation can stand. But in the background, we know that there's executive orders that have been made. And so we know that and I don't remember the number, but President Trump had made an executive order. Okay. He had made an executive order that he wants open competition for fishermen. And so that's another, we have the science and all of that.
When I put it down,
There's something, yeah.
hold it.
Okay. So that brings me back to my question, because I really do agree with the efforts that you are taking with the Friends of Everglades. But my question is, there is that overarching political milieu we're in, and I understand that NEPA, I don't know if there was an executive order signed to lift that. Not yet. Okay, I say not yet because I don't trust that some of these environmental laws will continue. It would be great if it can. That's just an additional, what I'm saying, it's an additional consideration that you have to make, that we didn't have to make.
Right. There was an executive order rolled out at the state level on immigration enforcement that has been used to justify this construction. But NEPA does not provide any waiver for purported emergencies. So that's very clear to us.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, really. Basically, they are allowed to continue the facility, but have you been able to at least stop expansion?
So when the preliminary injunction was granted on August 21st, all construction stopped that day. It was a remarkable day that I will always remember. As soon as the appeals court lifted the preliminary injunction on September 4th, vehicles were allowed to return. We've seen construction vehicles. If you go to our social media, you'll see some that were moving in just Friday. So expansion has not been halted, and it can continue there.
That's the worst thing.
And I'll just add while we're waiting for them, there have been designs on this site in the middle of the Everglades for a long time. It's this single long runway surrounded by Everglades wetlands. And as you might imagine, in Miami-Dade County and Collier County, there are folks who have designs on developing that site. And this looks like the camel's nose under the tent, right? So this temporary immigration detention center, where we now have permanent pavement, at least 20 acres documented of additional permanent pavement in the middle of Big Cypress National Preserve, entirely surrounded by it, could be pavement for some other development in the future. And that's really important to think about.
I believe Deb Grizel is online.
Hi, it's actually Chris Grizel, my wife and I. First, I just want to thank you for all the great work you're doing. I'm so proud of all you're doing, and everybody, myself included in our organization, wants to continue the preservation of the St. Lucie. But I am a political independent, and I do represent my entire yacht club. And one of the reasons for us joining was I was asked, is this a political organization? And I look at what you're trying to do is very political, which goes against our charter, or should go against the charter. I'm on a number of nonprofit boards, and one of our goals is always to be non-political. I look at our greatest supporters, Brian Mast. I mean, I think you're sticking a dagger in Brian Mast's eye in what you're doing. And unfortunately, I just can't, you're alienating 50% of your population and potentially your donors. This is not good governance. I cannot see why the board could recommend this, something that would alienate donors and your supporters. I would highly recommend that you pull this resolution and look at a different way where you can achieve the same goal without alienating so much of the population and again, your supporters. You're alienating your supporters. I represent the president of the Admiralty Yacht Club. We will have to pull our support of this organization if this resolution goes through. But I thank you for all the great work in your past. I just hope you can go, we can see, we are such a divisive country. Let's get away from politics. You're doing amazingly good work. Stop this resolution, pull this resolution, don't even vote for it, and look at how you can achieve your same goal without getting politics involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just respond to that briefly. I respect your opinion, sir. And I'll say that from our very early days of gathering in opposition to this proposal, I was out there on, it was June 22nd, and we were standing with folks who were wearing Gulf of America t-shirts. There are conservatives with us. This is not a partisan fight. This is about protecting a site that is surrounded by Big Cypress National Preserve, our country's first national preserve from harmful development that had zero environmental review. So I will push back against the claims that this is partisan. There are people of all political stripes that are standing with us in this. But I do think there are some forces out there that want to divide us with the partisan politics.
Merritt Matheson, President Indian Riverkeeper and Martin County Forever representative. And I do have a question, but I'd like to kind of push back on the politics of this. There are certainly two sides of this. There's a political question of alligator Alcatraz. That is not what is in the resolution, having being a board member, having had input on drafting it, and making that statement when the Rivers Coalition Board brought up the resolution. This and the fight that Eve is leading at Friends of the Everglades is strictly an environmental issue. And it's strictly fighting about a precedent of removing NEPA. And it's something that is happening. We should all be extremely irate. Big Cypress National Preserve, I drove through it 2 days ago. You look around on either side, you are clearly in the middle of the Everglades. And every inch of pavement that's put down there is that much less water in one of our national preserves that can flow south. Nowhere in the resolution that's written that's before this group today does it take any stance on whether alligator Alcatraz should exist or not. It takes a stance that it should not exist in a national preserve. And to put perspective on how important NEPA is, as part of the City Steward Commission, I had the privilege of leading the City of Stewart through the entire LOSUM process to get where we are today with Lake Okeechobee discharges, where right now, LOSUM was a win for us. We will not get discharges unless the lake is above 16.5 feet. LORS 2008 crippled our estuary. LOSUM had to follow the NEPA process. It took over 6 years to get that new management plan passed. Started in 2018. LORS 08 was supposed to have a next schedule done 10 years later. It didn't actually get approved till 2024. That's 6 years of a plan that harmed us because of NEPA. And yet that process worked. It took all those meetings to get to the point where we are. And we should be proud of the environmental protections and the precedent that Friends of the Everglades is trying to fight to keep established. Whether it's the Everglades or Merritt Island National Sanctuary. These are our national parks. And this is not a political issue, it's strictly an environmental issue. And Rivers Coalition is fighting to make sure that the water we've been fighting for decades to go south can go south into the Everglades. So my question to Eve and Friends of the Everglades is, what are you going to push for when you eventually win this lawsuit? I hope it will be total restoration of the 20+ acres that has been, with a stroke of a federal pen and a state pen, destroyed in our national preserve there. That is public land that we should be irate that that's happening without the proper environmental oversight.
So right now we are focused on turning off the lights at the site. Where you once had some of the most incredible dark skies in the southeastern United States, international dark sky area, prime Florida panther habitat, you have what looks like a stadium in the distance. So right now we're focused on turning off the lights, stopping the active harm, and then that's a question for us to navigate with our attorneys in terms of what remediation might need to be done. By the way, the Miccosukee Tribe of Florida joined our lawsuit, and our co-plaintiffs are the Center for Biological Diversity. So we have a great coalition of good-hearted folks fighting the good fight. It is not easy. It is very politicized, but I stand before you here today as someone who's been coming to Rivers Coalition meetings for at least 10 years. When I used to sit in the audience and write about Mark as a journalist, I stand before you here today telling you this is not partisan. I know this coalition is not partisan. This is protecting sensitive area, endangered species habitat, surrounded by our country's first national preserve in the heart of the Everglades, where we want our water to go instead of coming out the St. Lucie River. So it is really fundamental. These battles were fought and won 56 years ago. I wish we didn't have to fight them again. It is not easy to fight them again. We had other objectives when we started this year, but here we are, and I feel proud to stand before you as someone with no party affiliation and be very confident that we are on sound ground.
Does this thing work? Okay. I understand the Admiralty guys' concern that the Everglades, for instance, the Everglades is opposing something Mr. Trump wants. But if you'll listen to, when I go to lunch, I turn on the radio on at PSL. There's a show that the Everglades Foundation sponsors, that every show, it has a clip of Mr. Trump saying that he was elected to restore our ecosystems in Florida. Mr. Trump, if he was properly informed, would probably be for this. So unless the Everglades Foundation misunderstands Mr. Trump's intentions, they should get Mr. Trump to be in favor of stopping the damage to the Everglades and Big Cypress Preserve. That's all I got to say. It's not anti-Trump. It's what Mr. Trump says he stands for. So let's get together.
Thanks. And just for folks who might not know, Friends of the Everglades is not affiliated with the Everglades Foundation, but I know we have a member representative, and we would welcome them to stand with us in this fight.
Got one more, maybe two more quick questions, and then we can move on. Go ahead, come on up. You had a question. There you go.
Thank you. My name's Peter Upton. I'm on the board of Friends of the Everglades, but I just want to point out to those who are concerned about the politics of this, this is not the only lawsuit involving the detention center in the Everglades. But this is the only lawsuit that is addressing the environmental damage that can potentially happen. The two other lawsuits that exist, there's one that's being brought to address the due process rights of the detainees, and that's in the Middle District of Florida, which is in Fort Myers right now, the federal court. And then there's another one that's challenging the state's right to operate a federal detention facility. So if those who are engaged and concerned about the politics of this, I would look to those two lawsuits because those address the immigration side of this. This is purely an environmental issue from the perspective of this lawsuit, and has been from the very beginning.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, this is kind of off the wall, but, okay, wait a minute, because they also tried to get rid of Maggie. Now, I don't know if it's true, but they're trying to get rid of our big person, Ruth. I don't know if it's true. They want, I heard something about they wanted to stop and get rid of the building where you're building her site and everything.
Yeah, let me just speak to the
that's
pressures
sure,
that this is an intense battle. Yeah, we've had threats to our offices that we've reported to local law enforcement. Thank you to the City of Stewart Police Department and Sewell's Point PD. And this is an intense battle, and I think that speaks to what you're touching on here. But the strength of the Rivers Coalition has always been our unity on water, and this is about water. This is about the environment. This is about our bedrock environmental laws in our country and whether we're going to fight for them in this moment. And they are not guaranteed. We're at a real moment here. And I know there are diverse political views in this room, but I think our strength has always been in how we can come together over water.
Thank you, Eve. And one more question or comment. Okay, and maybe two. Okay, great.
Thank you. My name's Brian McGann. I represent the estuary in North River Shores. I fished for probably 30 years down in, this is a science issue, because I fished the Florida Bay for 30 years, and the salinity down there is being grossly affected by not having the river of grass being gone down there. And I'm one of your biggest supporters. I'm a cheerleader for you, and I'm wondering how difficult it is, the education behind it. When I hear our DeSantis call our river of grass an iconic swamp. So I see what you're against. When he publicly said that, can we hold that against him?
Well, I think our governor and even the president, I'd invite them to go out and go for a swamp walk, drive Loop Road. This is the road that is just south of Tamiami Trail, just south of the detention center site in Big Cypress National Preserve. I've done it recently. I took some Washington Post journalists out there, and you can see water flowing south under the culverts around Loop Road coming from where the site is. So what you put on 20 acres of pavement at the detention center site, all those cars that are parked there now, because there are thousands of people going to work there every day, that runs into Big Cypress National Preserve, which flows into Florida Bay. Thank you for making the point of connectivity.
Laura Joby, Commissioner in the City of Stewart, and I'm really here to talk about the fight. A year ago, if someone said that, well, actually 2 years ago, if someone said that we would not have an environmental attorney, we did, because there was support. There were people who wanted that to happen. We know that that good fight can go on, and we have something spectacular in Ruth Holmes, our environmental attorney. A year ago, the state tried to put in resort areas and golf courses in our state parks. And everyone, and I was so proud of everyone, even people who don't use the park, came together to fight that fight. No, you're not going to touch it environmentally. That's for us. You want to put a golf course, put it somewhere else. But so what I'm really up here to say is, those who say the fight is not worth it, you're not going to win. Every fight is worth it. We're doing this for the next generation. And we need to show them that we fought for them, because in the years to come, they will have to fight the same fight. And they need to look back and say, they fought for us, we need to fight for ourselves. So keep up the good work. Thank you so much. And everyone needs to be on the side of environment here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Eve, and everything for getting us up to date and presenting on that. We will, again, tally the votes and then both here and virtually on chat for the member organizations, and then we'll go from there. But we appreciate everybody's comments and questions that you had on that. We're going to move on to the rest of our agenda, and here's some updates from the county, City Commission, Water Management District, and so on. We'll start with Amy. Amy Eason is in for John Mayle, who's on your agenda for the Martin County. So Amy, give us a quick update
Yeah,
on
thank
Martin
you.
County.
Thank you. Amy Eason, Environmental Resource Engineer, substitute for John Mayle. Just wanted to give you an update. You know, everybody's aware of the 2024 sales tax for environmental lands, and we wanted to give you an update as part of that environmental lands acquisition program that we're going to take about 16 properties to the board next month to recommend them for approval for the use of that sales tax. They're going to be either acquired or have conservation easements on them. So I wanted to give you an update on that. I also wanted, yeah, in October. Yeah. Yeah, at one of the meetings. So be aware of that. Yeah. Yeah, it's right now draft on the October 21st is what we're saying. Yeah. Exactly. Which that's why I wanted to give you an update on that. So, and I also want to thank Mark for last Monday, our division actually got to sit down with them and the staff and really collaborate on things and get to know each other so that, you know, as we're doing work in the river, that we have a resource to go to, you know, come up with projects in the future. We do have 2 construction projects that are going on right now. It's the East Fork Creek Phase 2 construction. That's an SDA project. It's Phase 2 of it that we're going to be reducing the nutrients of stormwater that goes into the river, as well as we have Indian Riverside Park Living Shoreline project, and you're going to actually see some work in the water soon to construct some of the breakwaters there. So that's my update.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. All right, we got next up is City of Stewart. Ruth, do you have any updates currently from the city or want to pass for it? Okay.
We've got people on Zoom, so.
These are the types of projects that Amy. Here you go, Mark.
It's working.
Just.
These are the types of projects that I believe the city of Stewart should be supporting because they are good projects. They may not be the big silver bullet that we're all looking for to stop the discharges, but they help the water quality, and that's what everybody here is trying to do.
Yep, thank you, thank you.
All right. Next up, we've got anybody from the Water Management District. I know we usually have the regional representative here, but Tom Hurley, our governing board member, wasn't able to make it. He emailed me, said he might be able to be online, so he may be online. But we appreciate attendance from the district. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yes, come on up and introduce yourself and have a word, just a word. Come on. And you're the regional representative in our district. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions for her? Right now, we go to our state up, then federal update. We'll use Major Bell. So Major Bell, turn it over to him. Thank you.
All right, so I'll provide some quick updates for IRL suite of projects for everyone. So the 4A, this is a C2324 North Reservoir, the pump station that we awarded last year. We're currently 46 days ahead of schedule, so that's great. And we're still anticipating completion of summer of 28. C2324 North Reservoir Contract B, so again, we have to break these contracts up because of the cost of these things. Has not received what's called the President's budget for fiscal year 26. So if you're not tracking, September 30th, we are out of funds. So we'll be pencils down on that project and we'll not be able to touch it until we get funding for that. So, but if things go well, we can get it what's called into the work plan. We should be able to have a construction contract budgeted so we can make a release sometime late fiscal year 27, 28, depending on where we are with plans and specs. C44, currently at 5 and 1/2 inches on the feet in that reservoir. So we've had a lot of rate in the basin here, and it's being collected instead of discharged, released through the S80 structure, being captured. So I will provide some analysis of that. So 7,300 acre feet has been stored in the C44 since we've ended recovery operations. So what that means is instead of, if the C44 reservoir was not there, the S80 would have to open under flood fight conditions. So, you know, having that reservoir is showing a benefit. What that equates to is that the S80 structure would have operated for 7 days at 500 CFS or 4 days at 1,000 CFS. So not, I guess, harmful in what our science says, but maybe harmful for the estuary as a whole from a salinity perspective. Last wet season, we stored 19,000 acre feet, and that equates to about 19 days at S80 at 500 CFS or 10 days at 1,000 CFS. I do want to highlight that the early calendar year of 26 will have the POM, so that's a project operation manual for the C44. So we'll provide public input on that and how we'll operate that facility moving forward. There'll be some interesting data that folks may find interesting, and along with the diversion canal once it gets completed by South Florida. I did want to provide a technical update on the HAB. So this is the harmful outflow bloom testing that will be conducted along the C44 canal at the S308 structure and through the S80 structure. That has been officially on hold now and moved to calendar year 26. So if you're not, so again, different organizations within the Corps of Engineers, our Engineering Research Development Center, ERDIC, out of Vicksburg, has modded their contract to be able to push that into next year because conditions weren't able to be conducted this year. So the C2324 STA project, we're 90% complete on that project, and we're anticipating a completion of summer of 26. We'll have a ribbon cutting for that. The C44 seepage canal feature, the seepage management feature, that contract award is still on track for summer of 27 with an anticipated completion date of 2030. And that'll allow us to do full operations up to 15 feet of storage in that reservoir. The muck removal project, that's a phase 2 project. So we're what's called the PPA phase. That's the program project agreement with the South Florida Water Management District. So that's with our both legal teams right now under legal review. And once that's completed, And we continue to work with Martin County on all the other things that are required for that muck removal, but we're still on track for that. Lake Okeechobee is at 13.38 feet, and our 2-week projection shows us to be at 13.8 or so, and we're currently 0.5 feet above the water shortage management band and a total of 193 days in the recovery envelope. So that's great news for the ecology of the lake. We did release a notice of navigation along the Okeechobee Waterway along Route 2. There's approximately 20 acres of tuckus. That's an invasive species that's causing navigation challenges there. So if you're out on the lake on those routes, please check our websites and call the operators as well. And that's done with mechanical removal, not chemical treatment, so that folks know that'll be a harvester out there, so it's a lot more massive and be able to get that stuff up. Talking LOSUM and the next version of LOSUM 2.0, son of LOSUM, we're still workshopping that name. But I would anticipate that we're going to start to have public meetings late calendar year of 26. If folks are not tracking, the EAA is being expedited. So there is an agreement between the state and the Department of the Army that was signed. That's kind of put the Corps of Engineers in a position that we have completed by 2029, which is great news. However, there's tertiary effects that cause us not to be able to use that facility if we don't have a water control plan in effect. So we have to have a water control plan available when the construction is complete. So we'll have a lot of public meetings and engagements in that, and we're anticipating it'll be a 5 to 7 year process based on what LOSUM provided. Maybe less because folks are educated and the time span between LOSUM and LOSUM 2.0. Hopefully will allow a faster transition, but we need to have that ready to go so that we can do initial fill and all these other things. We did conduct a ribbon cutting for what's called the inflow-outflow canal, the EAA again. So that was conducted on Tuesday. And I do have a personal note for specifically Commissioner Collins and other commissioners that are here as well for the city of Stewart. So today officially opens what's called the AIM Marketplace. So I would interview for jobs for my next position in the Army. But the Army has extended a 1-year extension here. So I'll be here till summer of 27. And this is the first forum that I wanted to bring that up to because of specifically the city of Stewart, but no one else is tracking. So I just want to let you guys know you're the first folks that I've let know that, other than the folks in the military chain that have had to sign some paperwork. But I just wanted to let the community know, thank you for your support. And I'll continue to do the best I can with the tools I'm allowed to do. So thank you.
Straight. Great news from the Colonel. We do have some questions, Colonel. Major. I already promoted him. How about that? But Major, we got some questions.
Lieutenant Colonel, correct?
Not yet.
Okay, not Lieutenant
Board
Colonel.
convenes October 14th, releases in November 4th. Results will be pending service audit
I hope we get
committee until July, so
My
next year.
question is this. The C-44 reservoir and STAs is collecting water from the C-44 agricultural area and also from the C-44 if they can't do it, rather than go into the St. Lucie River proper. My question therefore is this: is there any kind of ground seepage, either in the reservoir and in the STA, that goes into the ground and acts more like, I'll say, groundwater used to flow before we change things man-made? In other words, if there's 100 gallons in the STA and the reservoir, how many of those gallons actually go into groundwater and get filtered in groundwater in the area of the system? Both. How many percolate through? Any idea?
I would have to get back with our engineers to get that data.
Please,
I
I'd
don't
love
know
to know
that.
that.
So
And I think that would be helpful here too, to know that nature, groundwater, is actually cleaning up more than what is built.
That's okay. So we know that stagnant water harbors bacteria, and we know that major releases into the estuary shocks the system. So why not trickle the water in, which would allow some movement in the lake and limit some of that bacteria growth, and would allow the river to acclimate to water coming in.
So storage north of the lake, I can kind of speak to that. So South Florida Water Management District is leading that program. So that's LOCAR. So that's Lake Okeechobee Component A Reservoir north of the river. And then we'll obviously have an accompanied storm treatment area, right? So to take that off the Kissimmee River, store it, and then release it when necessary. But those projects are, you're probably our focus right now is EAA. And I'm assuming that South Florida Water Management District focuses the EAA. Both the state and the Department of Army have to deliver that project. So not to say that storage north of the lake, east, south, or west, but those projects, I can't speak to details because that design is with South Florida Water Management District, but there are projects for that.
I'm talking about just in general.
Yeah, CNSF.
Just a slow trickle versus a shocking to the system.
So mostly when gather the water out there, put it in the reservoir, it's always an estimate, stormwater treatment, man-made marsh. Not trickle. Stormwater treatment rate. Uptake nutrients provides back. Good question. Go to Jim.
The muck removal process or program that you were alluding to, is that IRL South or is that
Correct.
in-
Yeah, so I've asked the staff specifically on, because I had some questions from Martin County last week at a conference because of the oyster restoration that has been conducted in there. So I've asked the staff to brief me on where the delineation areas are going to be, so those aren't going to be impacted. And then we actually think by doing the muck removal will enhance those and cause them to expand. So we have to look at our science and everything else, but that's what we're being hopeful for. But I don't know exactly, because the question I had was, what are we talking about for cubic yards, right? Because depending on where you are, if you're, in a pocket, there's could be 3 or 4 feet of muck. So yeah, or deeper, right? So what I've asked, what we can do to try to figure out a way to get it moved to the left, right? And Representative Mass and I were out on the waterways, and he's going to try to get us the funding to be able to get this stuff moved forward. So that's, as long as we've got to work through the process, obviously, it's a lot harder for us to do things, but I've had assurances from Mountain County and South Florida Water Management District, they're going to take advantage of those avenues to get us the data we need to be able to execute that. But the biggest thing is the legal agreement that we have to have between us and the non-federal sponsor, South Florida Water Management District. So as soon as that's done, we could be able to start moving out on that a lot quicker. But we don't let, government shutdown is upon us, right? So we're running out of time for certain actions, so.
Two questions. First, when can we expect to see the after-action report on the recovery mode discharges? And then second, I believe it was on a recent media call, Colonel Bowman had suggested that the Corps is hoping to see the lake get to 14 feet this year, because if it doesn't get to 14 feet, there could be challenges in terms of water supply once we get into the dry season. Do your predictions predict that you're going to see 14 feet?
So we're anticipating at least 14 feet. So there's communities that want to see 14 and a half. So it's just balancing that. But again, we don't have a vote on that. It's all up to Mother Nature. I could tell you that Kissimmee, looking at the holistic CNSF, Kissimmee Valley is full at capacity. So any rain over that basin is immediately, again, 14 to 25 days will make its way to the lake and continue to increase the volume, lake depth there. The concern I've had, and I brought it to the staff as well, is the ascension rate. So we have a target rate, and then we're seeing that we're getting infills a lot higher than we're getting outfill, right? So the ascension rate is something I'm concerned about because we spent all this effort getting SAV, and that leads into the AAR, and the action review for the actual conduction of recovery operations and not recovery envelope. And that'll be sometime in the dry season. So again, we're still in the just past the middle of hurricane season. So we have staff committed to other things, watching the Atlantic and other things, but we're hopeful. I've met with the staff and I've kind of provided them what's called Army doctrine, and they all looked at me like I was a crazy person and told them to read this document because there's a specific process and procedure and a way it needs to be collected. And I also emphasize that the community has to be involved. So we're gonna meet with business councils and other things as well to take those feedback, but it's gotta be based on science and other engineering effects, right? So those things are not emotional. They're very, very hard to go through, but because they usually pick on entities within organizations. But we'll take those comments that are actionable based on science and incorporate into to a report, which we'll provide for the next commander. And that way he can look through it and say, oh, we conducted this. How did it go? What was the perceptions, everything else? And then he can kind of understand the impacts. But by the way, that's going to be in the development of LOSM 2.0, right? So we're just hoping that we're being very hopeful and very positive that the next LOSM process, you know, especially if the EAA is conducted, that's roughly a half foot off the lake, right? Storage capacity. So I don't know what the future looks like for the S80. But again, FRM, flood risk management, and those types of activities, if we have increased hurricane activity over the lake, our modes shift from environmental focus to health and safety, right? So if there's an issue, we have to use the avenues that are available to protect life. That's why the federal government is in charge of the lake. So just to let folks know, and just same as 5 years, we will never open S80. That's not necessarily true if we have hurricane events or have the conditions in the environment that require us to do that, right? You got to remember it's 1928, 1926, 2,800 people died, right? So we've just got to remember the focus of one of the project purposes is flood control. So
Thank you. Thanks, Major. On the muck removal and stuff, and then I'll go to Diane, but in the IRL South, one of those components is that muck removal, and those circles right in the middle estuary, as Jim pointed out, I've dove on those, and there's about 6 to 8 feet thick of flocculated muck and ooze that's been accumulating there. And the project component there calls for taking out 7.9 million cubic yards of that muck material and disposing of, maybe amending it in the soils out in Alapata or other places. But I'm happy to say see that's going on. But the other thing with that is now that we have a new LOSM in effect, and starting in you know, last year in August, we now have those zero discharge during that whole management zone. And that's eliminating not only the phosphorus and nitrogen and fresh water that coming through, but over 8,000 metric tons of silt and sediment and muck that used to come from those Lake Okeechobee discharges and deposit themselves right here in the St. Lucie estuary. So I'm glad that stopped, and I'm glad the muck removal is going to start, because that muck keeps getting reflocculated, and every big tide condition or wind condition that we have in the estuary, I know many of us have seen as we're out there, hey, they must be doing discharges because all this, you know, turbidity is in the sediments. And it's not coming from the lake. There's no discharges. It's actually resuspending all that silt and sediment, which we've been fighting for years. Let's get that stuff out of there, get back to the sandy bottom that this estuary used to have. So I'm pleased to hear that. Maybe one more quick question from Diana, and then we can move on. Diana, she makes her way up.
We're hearing more and more about PFAS and how dangerous it is. It is a carcinogen, which they say there is no amount that is safe. Are we, in the different methods of your cleaning the water, are you removing the PFAS too? Does that take care of the PFAS?
So the water treatment and the storm treatment areas, is that specific to that or in general? So I can tell you that the federal mandate is not, we don't deal with water quality. That's a state function. So when you're speaking PFAS and microplastics, like I can't speak to that. That's not something that the Corps of Engineers is currently have the authority to do. Again, I would take that up with South Florida Water Management District or the Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay.
It's a state function.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Major. Appreciate it. Coming back on for another year. Yay. Woo-hoo. Moving on to Lake Okeechobee is Paul Gray, Dr. Gray on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Paul. Very good.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as Major Bell said, the lake's like 13.38. Releases wouldn't be triggered with LOSM for another 3 feet. And so the lake is rising rather slowly and steadily. And so barring a major rain event, we should have no releases this year. And that slow rise is also good for the aquatic plant recovery, we're not really going to know how well they take until another year. So, but things are looking good, and I think we're comfortable where we are. So thank you.
Say, Paul, question about how the SAV is recovering. We heard at the last governing board meeting, the staff presented to the district about some recovery from, you know, maybe even up to 20,000 plus acres of SAV recovering in the lake. Is that happening?
Yeah, that's what they did the sampling in August, and that's what they found. And so that's, you know, really good news. The question is, if we get a big storm, the lake goes up to 16 feet, those young plants are very vulnerable. So we're crossing our fingers we won't get too deep this year, both for the health of the lake and for the estuary protection.
Yeah, so like Paul's saying, if the lake is rising slowly and those emergent plants are recovering and coming back, then that's a good thing. But if it comes up too fast, too quickly, then it could have an impact on that. Thanks,
Yep,
Paul.
cross the fingers.
Appreciate it. All right, moving on to state and federal legislation. And
Hi all. Not a whole lot going on sort of at the federal level. At the state level, the state legislative session runs from January 13th to March 13th, but committee weeks start not next week, but the following week. Legislators are going to be back up in Tallahassee getting ready for the big show. There's some legislation that's already been filed. Nothing really that would need to be on our radar screen, but we expect it's going to be another contentious year. One of the big issues this year is going to be Senate Bill 180. Some of you have probably heard about this. This was a measure that was passed last year, which effectively prevents communities like the city of Stuart from passing new land use or zoning regulations that are deemed more restrictive or burdensome than what was in place starting in 2024. And then an additional provision of the law would, if you're hit by a hurricane tomorrow, for a year, you can't pass any sort of land use regulations that are more restrictive and burdensome. This has become an issue for a number of municipalities across the state. I believe the city of Stuart has signed on to a pending legal challenge of this. And there's a number of organizations throughout Florida, including Friends of the Everglades, Vote Water, and some other organizations represented here today, I believe, that have signed on to asking the legislature to repeal or redo some aspects of this law. So that's going to be a big one to watch this year. And of course, there's going to be others too. We'll keep you updated. Friends of the Everglades is going to do its legislative accountability work again this year, where we're going to track legislation, and we'll report on it every month here at the meeting.
thank you, Gil. So as the session starts, and you'll see delegation meetings starting in October here, our local delegation, I encourage all of our members to go to those local delegation meetings, even if you're just there to listen to how they respond to a lot of concerns in the community and where we're going forward on this year, what the climate's going to be going forward into the session, which starts in January and February this coming year. But there's going to be a lot going on, so stay tuned. And it goes very fast. And so even week to week, as we get updates, we may want to circulate some notices or things about the legislation going through on the state side week to week. So if you get some reports or interest, and Gil will go through Nikki, and we'll get it out there to all the members through the website.
Just to mention, Mark mentioned the legislative delegation meetings. In Martin County, it's Tuesday, October 21st, 9 a.m. to noon at the Blake Library. St. Lucie County, it's Wednesday, October 29th at 9 a.m. at the IRSC up in Fort Pierce. Again, that's an opportunity for you or for your organization to get some FaceTime with your local state legislators, sort of air your concerns or ask them for anything that you are advocating for this session.
Thanks for those updates. Now on to kind of our Rivers Coalition reports, and we'll start with River Kids. Is Kelly
online?
Kelly's on site. Go.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Awesome. Well, hi everybody. Great to see you. River Kids are starting to get busy again now that school's kicked back up and the weather is a little bit more bearable to be outside. Last weekend we did the International Coastal Cleanup at Stewart Beach, and we've got Estuaries Festival at Florida Oceanographic coming up on October 4th. And then some of our River Kids are participating in a Native Plant Society talk on November 5th. So they're actually going to be the guest speaker for the Native Plant Society, talking about some of the shoreline restoration projects they've been involved in over the last year, with a hopeful field trip maybe to the ESC site where we did one of those restoration projects. So gearing up to be a busy fall and winter for the River Kids. As always, if you know anyone who would like to join us, send them our way. Thanks
Thank
all.
you. Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it. And I've been talking with some of the River Kids too, and Kelly and Casey are kind of looking at programs to be in our kind of upper level of the River Kids, meaning that they're all been growing up, and they there's some high school programs and other upper level programs that River Kids is looking into to keep them engaged
Yeah.
as we go forward. So appreciate that. Speakers Bureau, Todd Weissing got some programs coming up.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Todd Weissing. I'm the coordinator of the Rivers Coalition Speakers Bureau. We're pleased that we've been invited to speak at the Rio Civic Club annual meeting. We'll be one of the speakers there. And this gives me an opportunity to just say my commercial. Rivers Coalition, we've got an important message. We're happy to come to your organization. All you have to do is invite us. And the way you invite us is go to the Rivers Coalition website, riverscoalition.org, and click Request a Speaker, and we'll be there. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. All right, here we go. And updates on local issues and water quality. Our water quality weekly maps have been produced, obviously. We have over 40 testers in the site. And I want to kind of point out one of our testers, Paul. Paul is here. Stand up, Paul. He's been doing over 10 years. Here's an example of thank you, Paul, for all your testing. I mean, for somebody to do weekly water testing for a long period of time like that gives us this long period of record. And what that does is also give us that kind of period of record over a year period. And the little ziggly blue lines below that, including the red ones, are the discharges either from the lake and or our local basin. And you can see how they dramatically affect the water quality within the St. Lucie estuary. So, and kudos to our science team there at Florida Oceanographic who's helping to put all this data together, making presentations at symposiums and workshops and other places. So we're doing a lot there. Moving into seagrass, we've had some great success in our seagrass nursery at Florida Oceanographic, working with others up and down the Indian River Lagoon to help to restore and the right way to restore some of our seagrass that we've lost. And we'll kind of turn it over to Todd. We have any updates on seagrass system? Here we go.
Don't really have a whole lot, but let me just, as usual, things come up as people were talking. My Zoom screen shared. Can you all see that on the screen over there? Okay. So we were talking about the status of the lake and how long we've been in that envelope. So you can see it's really starting to clear the water shortage band now. And we've been in, I'm showing about 180 something days, maybe a little less. There's a couple of days where we kind of dipped below, but that doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. And it's good that there's seagrass or that there's a vegetation growing at the lake. Yeah, if you Yeah, so just to recap this slide a little bit, this faint line up here is last year. That's how high we were at this time last year, way up here in about 15.5 feet. This year, when we went into this recovery operations, the goal was to get down into this recovery envelope, which is the green line in there. We hit it in March or so, been down in there, but the goal was to get down below 12 feet for at least 90 days. We hit that around April 16th. We went 99 days, so they checked that box, and that was kind of a good, that was the goal. And then, 60 days below 11.5 feet, I'm showing we hit about 77 days, so we checked that box. So now we continue on below those numbers. We came back up above 12 feet, but we're still in the envelope right here, and this has kind of like a little linear regression on there to see what the slope is. So it's going up at about a half, 0.52 feet a day, I guess is what we're at right now. So it's rising a lot faster than it was. And so some folks were asking, are we going to hit 14 feet? Looks like we're pretty much going to hit that. So I was going to show some other things because I'm supposed to talk about seagrass more in the lake. Haven't downloaded these in a while. These come from the European Space Agency. They're kind of breaking their stuff on me. But these are some of the best satellite imagery I've seen in a very long time out there on Selfish Flats.
What's the date on that image?
This is August 14th. So I kind of went to the best one. If we go back, this is August. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, maybe. Nope, that's right. So this is the 17th. This is the 21st, which is just 4 days ago. But the lighting's a little different. And so then it goes back, it flips back to 2007. This is what we looked like in 2007. So, that's what we want to look like. But, this compared to how we were years back with the stop of the discharges. So, as you can see right now, we're at 0 and we've been at 0 for a long time. Caloosahatchee's getting hammered with 8,200 CFS right now. And that you can tell is all coming from their local basin.
That's not coming from the lake.
Nothing coming from the lake from what I can see. Other than that, that's the airport. I was going to maybe pull up while we were talking about the airport. And Mr. Giglio, you're asking about, is he still here? He was asking about the groundwater percolation of the EA, of the C44 and the STA. I'll have those numbers for you. These are another thing that happened at South Florida Water Management District, I think left, but they've kind of taken DB Hydro offline, the old DB Hydro that I used to run the whole back end of my website that has all these numbers on it. So a lot of my stuff went offline. Oh, on this day, and that reminds me what I wanted to show you. Just to throw it out there, this is when I realized that everything went offline. I'd going on my morning run on the weekend, and there's these kind of icebergy looking pieces of foam nastiness floating in the St. Lucie River. So I don't know where this stuff is coming from, but it did make me want to go look at the flows at the C24 and the C23 to see if that was stirring this stuff up on a calm day. Don't know what it is. But back to the question with the STA. Yeah, I'll have this site back up. But this is the graph of the C44 reservoir. So you can see the water that goes in, you can see the water that goes out. And so the difference is going to be rain, evaporation, or ground, water going into the ground. And it's interesting to see how much more goes in than comes out. I think that's it.
Yeah, we sure appreciate Todd. And if you want to see any of this, go to the website. He maintains his Ion Lake O. Ion Lake O is just a great website where all this information is. And if you have any other questions, get to see Todd. Riverkeeper Jim Moyer. Jim, you have to stand up again. Oh my gosh. Okay, careful.
It's okay. I think a lot of that foam is coming from the C23, C24. A lot of algae comes out of those, and it gets emulsified, and the cytoplasm in the algae breaks down, and it creates a soapy looking foam. The seagrasses in the whole lagoon are doing relatively well, but there are places where they're not doing as well as we'd like them to. And there's a lot of other macroalgae that are growing along where the seagrasses should be recovering. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing great. It means that we're doing okay. And I think that, it's not the time to, let off the brake and say we're doing okay, because we really aren't. There's a lot of other really important health issues that are going on with the estuary that we really need to sort of focus on. A lot of that has to do with land management as well as stormwater treatment. So I urge everybody to be more aware of low impact development and what we can do in order to achieve better stormwater management in the urban areas as well as in the agricultural areas. Thank you all for being part of my community.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, as Jim's mentioned, and you've heard me talk about before, these are what we call the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Plan. These three watersheds: Okeechobee in the middle, Caloosahatchee on the left, and St. Lucie on the right. We're monitoring this. These maps show the district's data of what those loadings are from all the subbasins within those watersheds into the systems. And they're 2 to 5 times higher than the total maximum daily loads that are supposed to be in here. So how's that control? Well, in 2013, we signed on to the St. Lucie Estuary for a BMAP, Basin Management Action Plan. And we stood down there in 2013. It's supposed to be a 15-year process to have all of these land uses within these watersheds and all these regional projects in place to reduce their loading from the runoff that goes into the canals and into the estuary, phosphorus and nitrogen particularly, to meet the total maximum daily load for this estuary. Well, it's been going on for more than 10 years, and every 5 years they shoot a milestone. We've not hit those milestones for reductions. And so we, as an organization, along with other organizations, are going back to DEP and saying, why aren't we meeting these milestones? And what's the plan to actually get to that TMDL? Because we are still polluting our estuary. And even though we stopped the discharges from the Lake Okeechobee discharges to this St. Lucie estuary, there's still a lot of pollution coming into the system. And we've got to get that stopped in order for our habitats like seagrass and others to recover, and also the nutrients to stop loading into the sediments that are coming into this estuary. So stay with me on this. I'll be updating the coalition as we go forward. We have another meeting today amongst our organizations. We've challenged some of the BMAPs, not only in the South Florida, these 3 BMAPs, but also in the Springs up in North Florida. There are some challenges to, hey, why are these BMAPs not being implemented? They're all voluntary. Hey, do these projects so we can reduce the nutrients and get there. Well, they're voluntary. They're not enforcing the pollution standards that we need to enforce. And that's our big push this coming year. So moving on to any other member comments before we close. Merritt? Yep.
Hello, Merritt Matheson, Vice Chair of the Environmental Land Oversight Committee for Martin County Forever, the half-cent sales tax. Just going to touch on a little bit of what Amy said, but we had our second real substantive meeting in the beginning of September. Again, she said those 16 projects we looked at are going to the Board of County Commissions in October, but those 16 projects total over 9,000 acres of land in Martin County to either be put on conservation easement or fee simple purchase. They stretch from a small parcel out on Hutchinson Island to multiple parcels along the banks of the South Fork of the St. Lucie River, which all be encompassed under the Blue Waves program, to parcels in Palmar, Palm Beach Heights, parcels that are literally on the headwaters of in the heart of the Loxahatchee, right where Drop of Wayne would fall and either be going one way to the Loxahatchee River or the South Fork of the St. Lucie River. So I'd encourage everyone to go to the website now that has been shifted from getting the sales tax ordinance and resolution passed to now updating the public on what's going on. That's martincountyforever.com. Anticipated revenue this year to go to the county for this purchase is over $20 million. The first substantive meeting, I think I mentioned, was a lot of parcels in Palmar and conservation easement on Barbie Ranch. Those have since gone to the county commissioners and achieved approval. The Barbie Ranch is over 1,700 acres that abuts the C-44 STA, and that would be a conservation easement with the goal being $5 million from the county and $12 million from the state to purchase the development rights forever in perpetuity on that area. So again, it goes from us, the Oversight Committee, to the County Commission for approval, and then staff negotiates the kind of the minutia of the deal, and it's done and put in conservation. So thank you.
Thank you. And while you were talking, does that bring it up that's the website with the maps on it?
Yeah.
And that's martincountyforever.com?
martincountyforever.com,
Okay.
and that'll be updated, as this process evolves and continues forward.
Yep. We have a quick question, Mike Houston from Martin County. And, yep.
Mike Houston, Martin County Senior Project Manager, and more information on the Barbie Ranch Conservation Easement acquisition. It's supposed to go up before the governor and cabinet next week for their approval. After that, it'll be up to 120 days to move to closing. So within the next several months, that'll be locked up.
Thank you very much. Diane, you're right next to update. Yep.
What I'd like to say is that I am giving away free native trees. They are small at the moment, but they will grow fast in your yard. They help clean the water as well as the air and help with climate change. And they benefit you too by every 17% of your home shaded by a tree, you save as much as 11% on your electric bills. So if you're interested, let
Want
me
to save
know.
money? Go see.
See me. Also, I do give lectures.
Yes.
So if you're interested in having butterflies and birds in your yard, you want native plants that are edible, and also ground covers to lessen the amount of grass you have, even in shady areas. I give lectures on all of that, so just let me know and I'd be glad to help you.
Great. Thanks, Diane. Just real quick kind of updates. We did a little sip and science over here at Fraser Creek Brewery. We're planning to do more of those. We had about 85 people turn up. We just kind of had some updates and talked about the science of all this water quality issues and issues around our Everglades and the St. Lucie estuary and stuff. So we're going to do some more of that. As mentioned before, we're having this estuary festival out there October 4th at the Coastal Center. Lots of great participation from a lot of agencies and groups coming out to kind of do things. And lastly, I want to mention about we're trying to work with the city and the county, put up some sawfish recognition signage. Sawfish, or small tooth sawfish, are endangered, but they've been a lot of sightings recently too, just north of the Roosevelt Bridge and even out into our outer estuary. So if you can call this number, if you have a sighting, that's what we want to do. There's a whole hotline there for people to call that number. Small tooth sawfish are very unique little animals that grow very big, and there you see historical records of them in the Indian River Lagoon for hundreds and hundreds of them being caught in the nets that they used to use for fishing there. So that's pretty interesting, and we can go from there. Any other member comments or member announcements? If you do have something announcement, please get it to Mickey. Mickey can put in to that. We didn't, and we neglected to say that we have a new member of the apply. The Stewart Yacht and Country Club membership was put into the board. The board approved it. The delegates are Robert McNally and also Jeffrey Bishop. So I don't know. They weren't here. Are they?
Are they here? I'm Robert McAnally. So
Robert, nice to meet you. Thank
nice
you.
to meet you. I
yeah.
go by Bob.
Bob,
I'm the
thank you.
Commodore of the Yacht Club, of the Yacht and Country Club. Jeffrey Bishop is our Vice Commodore. He'll be Commodore in January when I step down. We have 330 active members in our club. We support other organizations like the Loggerhead Marine Center in Tequesta, also the Wildlife Center in Palm City, and we support the Oceanographic Center every year for the last 4 years and plan to continue to do that. So we're glad to be members of the Rivers Coalition. Thank you. And we also brought a check for a donation if there's somebody here that can accept it.
Accepted on behalf of our treasurer, Daryl. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard, Bob.
Thank you.
And Jeff. Oh,
Well, who's good?
yeah. Why don't you get a picture? There you go.
Over there. Perfect. Thank you. Turn around and
I think this makes 105 or 106 organizations. It's great. Thank you. All right. We appreciate your attendance today. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to our October meeting and our next time we'll get together. So in between time, if you have anything of importance, get it to Mickey right away at info@riverscoalition.org. Thanks a lot. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.